an update about it because I find the textbook doesn't go through a lot of like hasn't updated the future, like what's happening in economics. So I went through investing. So the extra credit assignment is focused on investing and finding the investing strategy from Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. So that'll be focused on you developing a strategy based on that book. So my investing philosophy is focused on investing in railroads through like the high dividends, high cash flow, high net income, high margin of safety, high moats. So CN Rail, CP Rail, you'll always need railroads to transport products. Then it's investing in banks like BMO, RBC, and TD. So deposits are invested into mortgages, and then they distribute about half of their dividend income and dividends. So that goes to, so you make 5%, 3 to 5% off your investment every year quarterly. And then banks always grow. That's a big part of it. And then Tesla, they're dominating they're going to dominate the energy market and create battery technology that outpaces all forms of energy. And then Microsoft, their company's been growing a lot in terms of massive growth in their sales, net income, net profit margin, and cash. And then also the minimum wage is too low. So David Card and Alan Kruger did a study on that, showing that the increase in the minimum wage would not reduce employment because a lot of businesses, the business owner makes more than enough money. The wealth goes to the business owner, not the workers. So like the Jeff Bezoses of the world and the Waltons, they all have mansions while the worker doesn't. So they can afford to pay the worker more, basically. Not every business, some businesses struggle, like restaurants do struggle, but owners can pay their workers more. So that's a big part of what should be updated. Also, the CPI isn't a flawed because it leaves out certain products like food and beverages, furniture, housing, transportation, healthcare, apparel, sports and recreation, funerals, haircuts, education, communication costs, tobacco, toys, and museum admissions. And then also it leaves out like switching to cheaper alternatives as well. And then the CPI does not capture innovation, quality improvements, technology, which is a problem. And then the unemployment rate is flawed because it doesn't include people who've given up looking for work. Because if they've given up looking for work, they won't be included as unemployed. And then they don't account for part-time workers looking for full-time work. So we're going to make those adjustments. And then using limit orders while stock trading is important because it limits the price you pay for it and it limits the price you sell at. So you won't pay higher or sell lower than the price you set for a limit order. And then diversification is important. So diversify your investments across many industries like railroad, banking, technology, car, and energy. So like own stocks across different industries and sectors. And then Squid Game shows the problems with getting money from loan sharks. So if a loan shark charges 8% in interest weekly on a $10,000 loan, you would owe $547,000 over a year. So like, don't borrow from loan sharks because you're gonna owe a lot more over time. And then even with interest rates on credit cards, like you'll owe 18% interest rate compounded monthly. You would owe almost $12,000 after taking out $10,000 at the beginning of the year. So debt is not good. And then investing is very important because if you make your money, let's say you make about let's say you make this salary per year, that's the average salary in the US. Um, and with inflation eating away at that money and you holding in cash over that period, you would make 734,000 in like over that period. And if you just invested in the S&P 500, you would make $4.7 million. So you make $4 million more by investing in the S&P 500. So investing, you make a lot more. And then like most of the wealth goes towards the owners. And right here, that goes through that. Um, as you become richer, more of your wealth comes from ownership. So with people making $10 million or more, 15% of this income comes from salaries, wages, and paycheck. The other 85% comes from stock ownership benefits such as capital gains, dividends, and interest. That's why you gotta buy stock. And then Elon Musk, like almost all of his $300 billion of wealth is through stock ownership of SpaceX and Tesla. And almost 0% is from salary because he makes no salary. And Warren Buffett, he's made only $4 million from salary, and then over $100 billion in stock. Almost all of his wealth has come from stock. Yeah. And then Jeff Bezos, about $1.8 million of his wealth comes from salary, while about almost 200 billion comes from stock. And then 21st Century Business is made from a podcast or blog that has referral codes for companies. So you get a commission from every new referral. An e-commerce store where you sell merchandise in terms of t-shirts, hats, pants, mugs, and other products with your branding. And you can sell other things too, like car parts, groceries, tools, many others. Advertising from Google Ads, where you get a fee from ad revenue. Tips and contributions from Patreon and other websites. So then glamping is a great business model because you can charge a lot more than a hotel. And I did research on one glamping business model, and they've grown their capacity by 425% over that 4-year period between 2017 and 2021. They charge about $200 to $550 per night per each stay, so average $375. So they would make about $1.8 million per year. So it's a great business. And then with crypto, crypto is going to change monetary policy completely because there's a fixed supply of Bitcoin and Ether. So this will keep the value there because they can't print anymore. Because as they print more, it becomes worthless, basically. The only reason a currency has value is because it's rare and scarce. If you print so much of it, it's going to be worthless. So governments can't print a ton to pay off their debts, which will be bad for them because they won't be able to use their currency to pay off their debts. Also, they won't be able to print money to grow the economy. Yeah, so, and they won't be able to lower the currency value through lower interest rates to increase exports. And then also TFSAs. You can contribute money to your TFSA, talk to your bank and the CRA about your contribution. It's usually when you turn 18. The years after you turn 18 is usually your contribution limit. So like for 2019 to 2021, it's $6,000 per year. And TFSAs are cool because if you make any capital gain, you could make $1 trillion in capital gains in TFSA, and there are no taxes in TFSA from any amount of capital gain. So yeah, that's basically wanted to go through. So we will start. So interest rate is the price paid for the use of money. Equilibrium interest rate is demand for money combined with the supply of money to determine the equilibrium rate of interest. So the Bank of Canada lends to banks if they need withdrawal money, if they can't borrow from another bank. So the assets for the Bank of Canada are advanced chartered banks, Treasury bills of Canada, other securities issued or guaranteed by Canada, securities purchased under resale agreement, other assets. And then liabilities, notes, and circulation, government of Canada deposits, chartered bank deposits, and liabilities. So monetary policy goals are to keep inflation low, stable, and predictable, to moderate the business cycle, and to help the economy achieve full employment and sustained growth by altering the money supply to influence interest rates and inflation target range of 1 to 3% annually. So open market operations. Bond markets are open to all buyers and sellers to corporate government bond securities. Bank rate is the interest rate charged by the bank when it lends to charter banks. So to increase the money supply, the Bank of Canada buys bonds. So increase money supply, Bank of Canada buys. Decrease the money supply, Bank of Canada sells bonds. And then, so Bank of Canada buys bonds from the public. Public gives up bonds for check. Check is deposits in charter bank. Charter banks reserves increase. Bank of Canada buys bonds. Charter banks reserves increase. Banks increase lending. Money supply increases. Bank of Canada sells bonds. Charter banks reserves decrease. Banks decrease lending. Money supply decreases. Open market operations. Bank of Canada sells bonds to public. Public buys bonds with check. Check is cleared in charter bank. Charter banks reserves decrease. Bank of Canada bond sales of $1,000 to charter banking system reduce the system's actual and excess reserves by $1,000. So how this works is when a bank needs to withdraw money, they borrow from another bank, and then the other bank charges the bank rate. So for interest, so let's say if TD needs $10 million for withdrawals, so they ask RBC for 10 million loan, and they pay for 10 million loan. TD pays the bank rate to RBC for interest on the loan. And then if let's say like CIBC needs 100 million for withdrawals, they ask every charter bank for a loan of 100 million. They don't have, none of them have 100 million. So they ask the Bank of Canada for 100 million. The Bank of Canada prints 100 million and lends it to CIBC. CIBC pays the bank rate for interest on the loan of 100 million. That's how the banking system works. Yeah, that's how you can withdraw money from the banks, because the banks lent out all of your deposits, so they have no cash in hand. Your deposits become mortgages, basically. So like your deposits are being lent to someone else to buy a home, basically. That's basically it. Or that's most of the business. Or sometimes lent to a business to grow, but rarely. Or lent for a line of credit, basically, for somebody. Yeah, basically. And that's how the banking system works. So the Bank of Canada sets the bank rate. So they set the rate that is paid for loans to each bank. Yeah. And the Bank of Canada changes that bank rate. So the bank rate is changed through the Bank of Canada buying and selling bonds. Buying bonds reduces the bank rate, and selling bonds increases the bank rate. Yeah. This is a good chart because here, higher bank rate, lower quantity of reserves, lower bank rate, higher quantity of reserves. So expansionary monetary policy. Economy faces a recession, lower target overnight lending rate, Bank of Canada buys securities, expanded money supply, downward pressure on long-term interest rates. Restrictive monetary policy, periods of rising inflation, increases target overnight lending rate. Bank of Canada sells securities, increases money supply, increases other interest rates. So as the bank rate goes up and down, the overnight target rate goes the same direction. Overnight lending rate goes the same direction. Prime interest rate goes the same direction. So they go in the same direction. So problem unemployment and recession. Bank of Canada buys bonds and lowers the bank rate. Excess cash reserves increase. Overnight rate falls. Money supply rises. Interest rate falls. Investment spending increases. Aggregate demand increases. Real GDP rises. Problem inflation. Bank of Canada sells bonds and raises the bank rate. Excess cash reserves decrease. Overnight rate rises. Money supply falls. Interest rate rises. Investment spending decreases. Aggregate demand decreases. Inflation declines. So the advantage of monetary policy over fiscal policy are speed and flexibility, isolation, and political pressure. So, like if there's a recession, reduce interest rates to grow the economy through higher borrowing to finance home buying and spending. Expansion, increase interest rates to reduce inflation through lower borrowing. So that's how these scenarios all work. But monetary policy has lags. It may take a long time for it to work. And then there also is cyclical asymmetry and a liquidity trap. Expansionary monetary policy. Problem, recession, slow growth. Expansionary monetary policy, lower interest rate. Decreased foreign demand for dollars. Dollar depreciates. Net exports increase. Aggregate demand increases, strengthening the expansionary monetary policy. Problem, inflation. Restrictive monetary policy, higher interest rate. Increased demand for dollars. Dollar appreciates. Net exports decrease. Macroeconomic stability and trade balance. The easy money policy that is appropriate for the alleviation of unemployment and sluggish growth is compatible with the goal of correcting a balanced trade deficit. So what happens is lower interest rate, reduce currency value, increase net exports for the economy. So that's what they do. Yeah, so that's what a lot of economies have done. So short run aggregate supply, input prices don't change. And then long run aggregate supply, input prices do change. So if there's production higher than potential output, there's high demand for inputs and input prices rise. So that can be bad. And then production below potential output, lower demand for inputs, input prices fall. So demand pull inflation occurs when an increase in aggregate demand pulls up the price level. An increase in the price level will eventually produce an increase in nominal wages, thus a leftward shift in the short run aggregate supply curve. Demand pull inflation in the short run, demand pull inflation drives up prices and output. Cost push inflation. Cost push inflation arises from factors that increase the cost of production at each price level. So the Phillips curve had the long run ADAS model supports three specific